I looked at my lifestyle and I thought that because I was working hard and because I was still
You deserve that.
quote unquote successful, that I
Yes.
deserved to go out and party, that I deserved to sleep with a lot of women, that I deserved to be this like frat boy, Christian Grey type person. And I got the wrong idea of what being a man was. I saw things like 50 Shades of Grey. I saw things like porn and thought that's what a man is. Someone who is controlling and dominating. And it gave me the wrong idea. And what that led to was while I was doing this internship, I had these habits that just kept downward spiraling and getting worse and worse and worse. And these eventually, I was presented with a situation where I was out with friends and some of coworkers were out with friends and me and a girl started talking. And it was her 21st birthday, so I brought her a drink and we started dancing and we started kissing. Then both groups walked to another bar and I got to that bar and I was like, I have to work early, so I should probably go home. And the girl says, "Can I come with you?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Awesome." In my mind, I was like, I didn't even have to do any work, which is the wrong way to think, by the way, for everybody listening. So I ordered an Uber. We get in the Uber, we head to my apartment, we go upstairs. There wasn't much of a tour. We just kind of hopped right back into what we were doing at the bar. Things start getting a little frisky. And at one point, she tells me she feels sick or like she's going to be sick. So I point her to the bathroom. She goes to the bathroom. She comes back out. And I'm like, okay, you felt like you're going to be sick. Let's just go to sleep. She was like, no, I don't want to ruin the night. I was like, okay, all right, cool. So we go back to what we were doing. We are making out and getting frisky again. And at one point, I pinned her hands above her head, like took my hands and put her hands above her head. And she said she liked that. I was like, well, I'm kind of into this different version of kinkiness. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm into bondage. She was like, really? I was like, yeah. And she's like, what do you have to tie me up? And I was like, this is happening. So I was like, oh, I have neckties in the closet or I have like tape out in the kitchen. She was like, go grab the tape. So I ran out and I grabbed the tape. I put it on her wrists and I put it on her ankles. And right as I'm like, I ripped a piece off to put over her mouth. And right as I'm about to put it over her mouth, she starts freaking out. And so I rip everything off and I'm like, okay, let's just go to sleep. Like, it's okay. Let's just go to sleep. And it like fantasy took over for a minute. My idea of fantasy took over where I was like, oh, this is happening. But when she started freaking out, reality kicked in. And so nothing happened but the tape on the wrists and ankles. And we go to sleep. She calms down. We go to sleep. I wake up the next morning. She's gone.
Welcome to your Wordless Podcast, the space where we redefine success, self-worth, and transformation. I am Nick Yaras, the soul-centered architect of transformation, helping you unlock your highest potential and build a legacy beyond limits. Now, whether it is self-mastery, career breakthroughs, or wealth creation, this is where change begins. Now let's dive in. Are you stuck in a job that you don't love, feeling like you're meant for more? It is not in your head, it is in your soul. I am Nick Yaras and I help high achievers like you break free from burnout, rewire self-doubt, and build a life aligned with purpose through coaching, hypnotherapy, and soul activation. Because let's face it, real wealth isn't just about money, it is about a aligned and happy heart, mind, and soul. Now, remember, you are worthy and you are enough. Let's transform your life together. Visit www.thenickyaras.holisticlifestyle.com to begin. Okay. I'm just gonna cut to the chase, and usually I take my guests and my listeners a trip down memory lane first off. Okay, right off the bat. Can you share with us what was it like growing up as a Greg Danielson?
Up. Like, if you were to look at my life before 21, you would have thought, oh, he played the game of life perfectly. Good grades. I was an Eagle Scout in the Boy Scouts of America. I had a lot of a lot of friends. I was in band, and I did almost everything a kid could do at multiple different levels, sports, everything. Grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, so like suburbia, white picket fence type life. And growing up, it was very just everybody did their thing. There was not much. I mean, we took a lot of vacations, but there's not much change in terms of what people were doing. You had the same family parties, you had the same conversations, you had the same, just this cousin is doing this and this cousin is doing that. And then I hit that age where people started asking what I wanted to do with my life. And I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. And I didn't even start thinking about it. But that's when I started looking at other people's lives. I started looking at how other people were living and how other people were thinking and how other people were moving. And I started comparing myself to everyone else around me. I started thinking, oh, if I just do what that person is doing, I'll be successful. Or if I just do what that person is saying or say what that person is saying, I'll get what I want to get. Or if I just think that way, that person is thinking, I'll get the good grades or I'll get the girl, or I'll get this and that. So I started comparing myself to a lot of people. And what that led me down was a path of not really figuring out who I was. I started developing a lot of imposter syndrome, especially as I went towards my college years. And that's when people started really asking the question of, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, I have no idea. So I went to a school where everyone was telling me, oh, this is the great school. It's the school you want to go to. I went into a major where everyone was telling me, this is a great major. It's the major you want to go into. You'll be able to do a lot with it. But none of it ever felt right. But I didn't listen to myself. I didn't listen to my gut. I didn't listen to my intuition. I listened to everyone else around me who was saying, this is what you want to do. And so I went and, kind of not really making decisions for myself, fell into a system of fraternity life, joined a house. However, then I went on one of my greatest adventures I think I've ever had, which is I left school to go work at Disney World for 9 months. And everyone, yeah, my freshman year of college, I said, I'm going to go work at Disney World. And my friend and I applied, and she did not get it, but I did. And she was like, you should go. And everyone was like, why would you do that? You just started school. Like, why would you ruin your academic career? Or why would you take that chance, take that risk? But I'll tell you right now, is one of the greatest decisions I made, because one, it was my decision. And two, I went and did something that I felt right doing. And when it came time to go back to school or stay at Disney, in my heart, I thought I should just stay. But everyone again was telling me, you should go back to school. Disney will be here. You can come back when you're done with school. Go back to school. So I went back to school and I started living in the fraternity, fell into really bad habits of partying and trying to just live life dangerously. Started listening to what other people were saying is okay, and what fell into bad habits that were kind of behind the scenes as well. And full transparency, one of those was at the healthy, ripe age of 19, I got introduced to internet porn for the first time ever. And being in a house of over 100 guys who all they talked about was getting drunk and going out and hooking up with girls, I fell deep down the rabbit hole of internet porn. And that led to a lot more bad habits, a lot of other decisions. But we're probably going to get into that. But growing up was almost like that picture perfect life. And I look back on it now and I realized that I didn't really have a lot of challenges growing up. So to kind of bring your answer back and everything, because I know we'll probably dive into the other part of my story, but what was it like growing up for me? It was something out of a storybook.
Okay, now obviously the follow-up question from me is, so what is your backstory? You explained to me, you shared with us you, how you were growing up, but then what actually happened after that frat house? And I wanted to also go back to why you like working at Disney, but we'll get back. That's the third part of the interview. So what actually happened?
So, like I said, if I was on the hero's journey, my childhood growing up, living at home, being a student athlete, being an Eagle Scout, being in band, like doing all the things that kids are supposed to do or want to do or whatever else. That was like the introduction to the story. That was the introduction of like, wow, look at how great this person's life is and this and
It's
that.
gonna turn out, fantastic in life.
They're going to live happily ever after as long as they just follow the script.
Right.
I didn't follow the script. So I go back from Disney to school. I move into the house of fraternity guys, and I had hit an age where, I didn't really care about relationships in high school until like the very end. And then I got to college and everyone was like focused on school, focused on this, join a fraternity, blah, 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 blah. So I didn't really focus on relationships at all then either. Then Disney, everyone's in their own fairy tale world. Nobody's really focused on anything other than just magic. But I got back to the fraternity and I fell into bad habits. And every conversation was, or most conversations were, what are we doing tonight? Where are we drinking? And when you're out drinking or when you're partying or whatever, that girl's cute. Or, oh, that girl's looking at you. Or, oh, you should go talk to that girl. It all just became this game of who can sleep with the most women. And it was like a constant, it was like a constant masculinity challenge every single day. Who can lift the most weight? Who can sleep with the most women? Who can drink the most beer? And it's just, it was, I look back on it now and it puts you in that mindset of competition and it puts you in that mindset of toxic masculinity and everything else. So I did that. I lived in the house for 2 years and then I finished college, moved into a senior house with some of the other guys, but the habits just got worse and worse and worse and worse. When I left, I knew I was going to do an internship. Well, let me rewind a little bit. I went to school for project management, but about halfway through, I was working in sports. I was officiating intramural sports on campus and I was officiating high school sports off of campus. And about halfway through, I said, I don't think I want to do project and construction management. And everyone was like, well, it's too late to change now. And I was like, well, I didn't think I wanted to do it the whole time anyway. So they're like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, well, I really like sports. So I graduated barely. Like if the line for graduating was here, I was like here. I spent every other semester on academic probation because I would party so hard and then be like, oh crap, now I got to,
Exams.
get my stuff together, get it back together, and then party again. It was like I was on, I was off. I was on, I was off. I think I needed a 2.0 to graduate, and I got like a 2.17.
No judgments.
But anyway, so like halfway through my junior year, I tell my boss, I'm like, hey, I think I want to go into sports. He's like, well, you don't have the grades to go to grad school. And most of these sports programs, they require you to go do a graduate assistantship where you work at a university and you are a grad student, but you're like in a full-time employee of the university also. So I didn't have the grades to do that. So he helped me find an internship at another university. So I left school, had my month at home, and then I moved to a different state to go to that different university. The problem was the environment I was in at the school I was at, it followed me. So same habits.
Did you want to change? Did you know
Did
it
I
was
want
going
to
to lead you to? Yes.
did I want to change? No. I looked at my lifestyle and I thought that because I was working hard and because I was still
You deserve
six,
that.
quote unquote
Mhm.
successful, that I
Yes.
deserved to go out and party, that I deserved to sleep with a lot of women, that I deserved to be this like frat boy, Christian Grey type person. And I got the wrong idea of what being a man was. I saw things like 50 Shades of Grey. I saw things like porn and thought that's what a man is. Someone who is controlling and dominating, and it gave me the wrong idea. And what that led to was while I was doing this internship, I had these habits that just kept downward spiraling and getting worse and worse and worse. And eventually, I was presented with a situation where I was out with friends and some of my coworkers were out with friends, and me and a girl started talking. And it was her 21st birthday, so I brought her a drink, and we started dancing, and we started kissing. Then both groups walked to another bar, and I got to that bar, and I was like, I have to work early, so I should probably go home. And the girl says, "Can I come with you?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Awesome." In my mind, I was like, I didn't even have to do any work, which is the wrong way to think, by the way, for everybody listening. So I ordered an Uber. We get in the Uber, we head to my apartment, we go upstairs. There wasn't much of a tour. We just kind of hopped right back into what we were doing at the bar. Things start getting a little frisky. And at one point, she tells me she feels sick, or like she's going to be sick. So I point her to the bathroom. She goes to the bathroom. She comes back out. And I'm like, okay, you felt like you're going to be sick. Let's just go to sleep. She was like, no, I don't want to ruin the night. I was like, okay, all right, cool. So we go back to what we were doing. We are making out and getting frisky again. And at one point, I pinned her hands above her head, like took my hands and put her hands above her head. And she said she liked that. I was like, well, I'm kind of into this different version of kinkiness. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm into bondage. She was like, really? I was like, yeah. And she's like, what do you have to tie me up? And I was like, this is happening. So I was like, oh, I have neckties in the closet, or I have like tape out in the kitchen. She was like, go grab the tape. So I ran out and I grabbed the tape. I put it on her wrists and I put it on her ankles. And right as I'm like, I ripped a piece off to put over her mouth. And right as I'm about to put it over her mouth, she starts freaking out. And so I rip everything off and I'm like, okay, let's just go to sleep. Like, it's okay. Let's just go to sleep. And it like fantasy took over for a minute. My idea of fantasy took over where I was like, oh, this is happening. But when she started freaking out, reality kicked in. And so nothing happened but the tape on the wrists and ankles. And we go to sleep. She calms down. We go to sleep. I wake up the next morning. She's gone. All of her stuff is still there. Her phone that I had plugged in is still there. Her wallet is still there. The only thing missing is the sweatshirt of mine. And so I'm calling people. I'm running up and down. I live in an apartment building of like 400 people at the time. I'm running up and down. I'm knocking on neighbors' doors. I'm like, have you seen a girl, walking around in basically nothing? They're like, no. So I'm calling people. I'm calling friends. I go to the third floor. I go to the first floor. Nothing. People are like, oh, we'll find her, blah, blah, blah. Eventually I get a text from somebody saying, hey, she's fine. You can go to work now. And I was like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, we got her. She's good. Like, it's all good. I was like, okay.
And the text was from a cop?
No. The text was from a mutual friend of the both of us, who I was out with the night before. We were all out at the same bar. So mutual friend knew both of us. Her and I worked together, but we were in different departments. So we knew of each other. We just didn't really know each other that well. So the text was from a mutual friend. So I go to work, right? I go to work. Nobody says a word. I go to work for like 4 more days. Nobody says a word. She's back at work. And eventually
She
somebody,
didn't.
we didn't have each other. We've never had each other's phone numbers.
Right.
We never had each other's
Right.
phone numbers to talk about what happened, to discuss any of it.
And then a friend came
then,
over and to take all of her belongings, right?
yeah,
At the time.
another friend came over to get her belongings, another mutual friend. But after 4 days, I'm at work and somebody makes the comment. They're like, hey, whatever happened that other night with that girl? And I explained the story and I'm like, yeah, it was weird, but I think it's all good because everyone said it was good. And he goes, what did her boyfriend think of it? And I was like, what boyfriend? And he's like, oh, never mind. And then like 3 hours later, I get a phone call from a detective saying, hey, your name came up on this bar crawl from last Thursday. Would you be willing to come down to the station to answer some questions? Now, me thinking I'm this goody two shoes, upstanding citizen was like, yeah, I'll come down to the station and answer some questions, like anything to help local law enforcement. So I go down there and I didn't realize until about halfway through that the questioning was about me. As soon as the questions turn toward me, all of a sudden I'm freaking out. I'm nervous. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And the questions start going towards, hey, so you went back to your apartment and there was bondage. And I'm like, yes, there was bondage. But as soon as she freaked out, we took it off. And he was like, nothing else happened. And I was like, no, I don't think so. Like, I remember the whole night. He's like, you sure you weren't too inebriated or drunk to not remember? I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I remember the whole night. Like, nothing happened. But I'm sitting there just like in a nervous sweat because one, I've never been questioned by the police before. And two, going down there, I didn't think it was about me. So they swabbed me for DNA and they're like, can we come see your apartment? I was like, yeah, of course. So we go to my apartment. They find the tape in the trash. They find the roll of tape by the bed because I didn't bother to move it because I was 22 and, room's a mess. Didn't even think about cleaning up. So then they put me in handcuffs and take me down to the station. They say, we're gonna hold you until our investigation is done, which means you're under arrest.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat down there for 5 days in a drunk tank with 30 other men, shoulder to shoulder, about in like a 16 by 9 room for everybody listening. So not very big. I mean, you're shoulder to shoulder, you're trying to get some sleep, which I wasn't able to sleep because I'd never been arrested before. I've never been in this situation. I'm wearing khaki pants in a, like I'm almost
Cell.
I'm almost fully dressed up because I went down from work. And
Yeah.
so I sit in there. Eventually, they call me in to take my fingerprints and everything. They're like, have you had your phone call? And I was like, no. So they give me my phone call. It's like 1 a.m. So nobody's going to answer the phone. I leave a voicemail. And the guy's like, do you know why you're here? I'm like, I have no idea. And he shows me the paper. And I'm pretty sure everybody listening can put 2 and 2 together. But I was being charged with 3 counts of rape and 1 count of what's called criminal confinement. He goes, do not show this to anybody. And I was like, why? He's like, I think you know why. So
Why?
eventually, what?
I don't know why. Why? Why not?
So in the American prison system, and this is my opinion. A lot of people are going to say this is totally different. But if you're in there for drugs, or if you're in there for like beating up another guy or whatever it is, there are 2 things in the American prison system that is like severely frowned upon. One of which is having anything sort of.
Hi, I'm Nick Nieras, your host of the Your Worthless podcast. Now, if these real raw stories hit home, don't wait. Please follow, like, and subscribe my Spotify and YouTube. For bite-sized inspirational reels, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Don't wait. Your transformation starts today. Thank you, and bye for now.
Sex crime. So whether it was rape, it was child molestation, whatever it may be, that is like a big no-no, because in America, if you have a sex crime and you found guilty of it, you have to register as a sex offender, which means you can't live by schools. You have to tell all your neighbors when you move. Like, it's a big deal. Also, in the prison system, very, very frowned upon. Like, people get into a lot of trouble because people look up their background and they're like, oh, this guy's weird. This guy's, he's got all these cases on kids. And it's a weird subject to talk about because there are some weirdos out there. But yeah, it's very, very frowned upon. So when he showed me the paper and it said 3 counts of rape, which in the state I was in, there's only 3 definitions. So they threw all 3 at me. I could not serve time for all 3, but they threw all 3 definitions at me, which later on my lawyer had told me was, I think they don't really know how to define it. So they just threw them all at you, which I don't know if it's true or not. But anyway, after a few more days, my family gets my voicemail and they bond me out. But a news article came out while I was still in county jail being held, and it did not paint me very pretty. They got my mugshot. They got her side of the story, and they basically painted me out as a monster who had been doing this for a long time with multiple different people. And I remembered the day it happened because I'm sitting there. It's actually the fingerprint day. I'm sitting there doing my fingerprints and somebody's banging on the window. He's like, hey. And so I look and he puts the newspaper up on the window and says, "This is you." And I was like, "What?" And I didn't realize it. An hour and a half, 2 hours later, I'm being brought up out of the drunk tank to a cell. Everybody knows my last name. Everybody knows my name. I was like, "How do people know my name?" I get put in a cell. Within an hour, 3 people have knocked on my window of the cell saying, "You're going to die," or something along those lines, you know? So then an hour later, the officers are like, "We got to move you." So they moved me from one cell to a different cell in a different block. I get a whole new roommate or bunkie. And this one, the first one was kind of just kept to himself. This one was like, "Oh yeah, I heard about your news article going around, but like you're good with me." And I was like, "Okay, cool." I never knew, like I never would have known if he was going to stab me in my sleep or not. I have no idea. But news article leaked, newspapers going around, a lot of stuff that happened in that county jail that just was awful. But a few
Mm.
days later, my family finally gets the voicemail and they bond me out. So I get to go home. And all the court says was just make sure you make your court dates. So for 4.5 years, I fought my case. And a lot of stuff happened in that 4.5 years. About 8 months later, 8 months after all this happened, I show up for court and my lawyer is like, "Hey, you're sure nothing happened that night?" I'm like, "Yeah, why?" And he goes, "Because she's very pregnant." I was like, "So she has a baby." They DNA test me and the father, or me and the boyfriend at the time. They figure out the boyfriend was the father. They figure out this timeline that after this big event that happened to her, about 3.5 weeks later, she went and got pregnant with said boyfriend that I didn't know about. Yeah. So then I keep fighting my case. More and more stuff happens. But at some point, I kind of like, I was like, okay, whatever happens is going to happen. And I know this is going to sound a little arrogant to say, but I needed to move forward. I needed to not let this loom over my head for forever. So I went and got a job at a park district running their youth sports. I was like, I'm still going to go into sports. I started a online graduate degree in sports management. Eventually, I got certified as a personal trainer because I loved working out. I started working at gyms. I started doing all this other stuff. Um, Throughout all this time, I worked at a big gym. Eventually, one day, somebody walked in and said, "Oh, you work here?" And went and told the general manager. The next day, I was fired because of the news article. The park district, same way. Then COVID happened, and COVID,
Yes.
I moved all of my clients that I still had online. I started an online fitness business, but within that fitness business, I became pretty big. I mean, within a couple months, I had 5,000 Facebook friends. I had 10,000 Instagram followers. I became I went hard at it, and the results showed. But somebody from my high school saw it as well. And somebody from my high school who knew the story or who had read the news article and assumed they knew the story started a free petition on petitions.org, and sent it to all of her tens of thousands of Instagram followers and everyone from our high school graduating class. And all of a sudden, I started getting bookings on my website. I started getting bookings on my email of fake bookings, but basically people booking into my calendar that I had on the internet of, "Yeah, I want to talk to you because you're a rapist," or you should cancel your social media because you're a rapist. It was in my calendar that that was the subject of the call they wanted to have. People were every single post I made, people were commenting like, "Oh, you're a rapist," or "Is this what you did to that girl?" Like just the most hateful stuff you could read. And me, who still cared a lot what people thought of him and who had a lot of imposter syndrome, every single time it happened, I shut down all of my social medias. So I did that about 4 times where I shut down Facebook, I shut down Instagram, and then I would let it simmer for a couple weeks, and then I would reactivate them. Over time, it got mentally taxing, mentally and emotionally taxing to do that all the time. And so, with all that going on, I decided during COVID, I was making some decent money, online fitness. The state I was living in, they weren't opening up anytime soon. And one of my old friends from Disney reached out and said, "Hey, I see you have an online business. Would you want to move back to Florida? Because I need a roommate." So I was like, "Let's do it. I'm moving back to Florida." Because Florida was the one, the first state to be like, "Oh, you don't have to wear masks. You can do whatever you want." I was like, awesome. I have an online business. I'm moving to Florida. This is great. But the problems didn't stop with the social media stuff. I mean, it simmered down a little bit, but it was still constant. I moved to Florida. I get a job with a moving company. I'm working, they never could tell you how many hours you're working. So I'm working on and off like 12, 16-hour days. And my fitness business took a hit because I wasn't posting. I wasn't, doing as much as I used to do. My clients even noticed it. And then met this guy. Actually, I met the guy earlier, but I really started talking to this guy that I had met through this coaching program.
Excuse me.
And we start talking, and he's got a successful fitness business. He's like, yeah, but I don't really know anything about fitness. I just know how to make people sweat. So I'm a certified trainer. I'm a certified nutrition coach. This guy's just making them sweat. And I said, okay, well, let's merge businesses. I'll bring my clients into yours, and then I'll just handle all the programs. He's like, okay. So we merge businesses. We do that for a while. In my time in Florida, I'm going to speed up the story a little bit, but in my time in Florida, I'd work different jobs here and there while working online. I worked at a gym. I worked as a bartender. I worked at a Pizza Hut delivering pizzas. I also met my son's mom. So we dated for 2 years. We had a long break, but about 3 months before my trial, we took a 2-month break. And then about 3 months before my trial, she came back into my life. And I think I got back together with her out of fear because of what I was about to go through. So in January 2023, after fighting my case for 4.5 years, the courts was like, all right, COVID moved it back and different delays moved it back. We cannot delay this any further. We got to go to trial, because they did not give me any good deals. Like, some of the deals were just ridiculous of, hey, sign this. And I was like, no. We go to trial, right? A lot of new evidence is brought forth.
What
One of
new
which,
evidence? Whoa.
not new
Okay.
evidence, but new to me.
Mm-hmm.
This all happened on a Thursday night going into Friday. Now, they brought up four specific people who really, they obviously brought the girl up. They obviously brought her mom up, and they talk about different stuff. But apparently, and I'll just give the timeline down, right? Apparently, she left my apartment, walked barefoot to a gas station where she used somebody's phone, and she called her mom. Now, her mom was on the stand, said all this was correct. She called her mom, and she told her mom she was afraid. And her mom said, do you know what happened? Were you assaulted? And she said, no, I don't think so. So then her mom's like, okay, just stay where you're at. We'll figure it out, blah, 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 blah. So she hangs up the phone, and the guy who let her lose his phone was like, can I take you anywhere? She was like, yeah, can you take me to my boyfriend's? So the guy drives her to her boyfriend's. Now, remind you, she's wearing my sweatshirt, and that's it. She's wearing nothing but one of my sweatshirts. She drives to her boyfriend's. She sits outside. She does not go in. A police officer shows up. Police officer says, hey, can I ask you some questions? Your mom called us. And the officer asks her, were you abused? Were you assaulted? Were you raped? She says, no, I don't think so. So the officer's like, okay, well, do you want to go get tested? She's like, no, it'll be okay. The mutual friend of ours that had texted me that saying that she was okay took her to a nurse later that day. So the police officer was brought in to testify. This nurse was brought in to testify. And the nurse on the stand said, yep, we ran a toxicology. There was no drugs in her system or anything like that. So she wasn't drugged. And then she says, and then we did a rape kit down there.
Yes.
And she goes, and it looks like either a night of casual consensual sex or nothing at all. And that's what she said. And all of this is public record if anybody wants to confirm it. But then they bring in this forensics specialist who ran DNA on her and the tape. And they found more DNA on her and the tape of herself and the boyfriend everywhere except for behind the ear. That's the only place on her body that they found more DNA of me than her or the boyfriend. So they bring all these people in.
So,
And then, well, one more. Then they bring
okay.
then they bring up the mutual friend. And the mutual friend is like, oh yeah, Greg and this girl left the first bar, which was called Brothers. And they left in an Uber from there. And I had text messages. I had my Uber receipt. And my lawyer was like, you don't remember going to the second bar? Because you and Greg were texting about this second bar, and you guys went and stopped at an ATM. It's right here in the text messages. She's like, no, that didn't happen. And he's like, well, this Uber says that Greg was picked up from this other bar. And she was just like dumbfounded of that text messages were brought up. And the girl thought it was the first bar too. The girl says that she remembers walking out of the first bar. She actually doesn't remember walking out. She remembers being carried out, which even the Uber driver said that we both got in the car of our own free
Like,
will. But she doesn't remember the second bar at all either. So nobody remembers the second bar except for me and the text messages.
so she
Anyway,
was
so
too
yeah,
drunk at the time, or is this a lie?
I don't know. I guess
Okay.
we'll never find out. So we go
We'll
through the
never find
trial.
out.
And we go through the trial. At the end of day one, the detective is brought up. They play the video of me answering the questions. And at the very end, the jury asks the question of, did Mr. Danielson, did Greg ever say that there was ever any like penetration, sexual penetration? And the detective says no. In the video, he says, no, I don't believe so, or no, I don't think so. And my lawyer at that point was like, that's a really good question. So we go into day two, closing arguments, everything else. Then they deliberate for about 7.5 hours, maybe 8 hours, which was the most stressful, anxiety inducing 8 hours of my life. Because my life was on the line. At max, I was facing 22 years of prison and lifetime registry as a sex offender if I was found guilty of everything and they maxed me out. Now, jury comes back, and very slowly the judge reads off count number 1, not guilty. Count number 2, rape, not guilty. Count number 3, rape, not guilty. Count number 4, criminal confinement, guilty. Now, criminal confinement in that state has a lot of different definitions. Basically, like if you and I were in the same room and I closed the door and you tried to leave and I held you back by your shoulder, that's criminal confinement.
Just by the shoulder, not even. Okay.
Yeah, but it also gets like very drastically bad where it's, I met another guy who was found guilty of the exact same thing, criminal confinement, and he, you know what he told me he did? He strapped his nephew to a telephone pole for 48 hours, like with like truck straps or trailer straps, and just left him there. I was like, all right. So I'm found guilty of criminal confinement. They bring me back into county jail and I go to sentencing and I get sentenced to 5 years in prison. And I got sentenced in February of 2023. Now, if anybody is really good at math, it has not been 5 years. I got out January of 2025, end of January 2025, on good behavior, on a modification, because, and I know you're probably going to ask about this, Nicolette, but I realized a lot of things in there. I realized a lot about myself. I realized a lot about the actions and the choices I had made. I realized a lot of the things that I had been running from or trying to escape from in my life. And I made a lot of serious changes. I read over like 300 self-help psychology books. And I just became obsessed with being a better person and a better human being. And so when the time came and I filed for it, I appeared in front of the same judge who, when I was at sentencing, I called this a mistake. And I appeared in front of that same judge and I talked for about 10 minutes. And then a few months later, the judge said, all right, you're free to go. And now here I am. I got out and everyone was like, you should get back into coaching. And I was like, no, it just doesn't feel right to be a coach. Like if it happens, it happens. If people want my coaching, awesome, because I can help people lose weight. I can help people make total mindset shifts. I dabble in spirituality. I like emotional intelligence. I've read the books. I've done the work. I could definitely coach people if I wanted to. If it happens, it happens. But I fell in love with my creativity. My whole childhood, my whole life was, everything was supposed to be a certain way that I shut down my creative brain. Everything was super analytical because, like I said, people were making decisions for me. So everything was how it should be. And you had to follow a script and you had to follow, the guideline. So in there, I learned how to draw. I started writing books. I started writing poetry. I even started writing raps for a couple people in there. But I started really embracing my creativity. Then I got out and I started getting into videography. And I'm also working on chasing my dream of becoming a travel content creator because ever since the age of 12, said if I can figure out how to get paid to travel the world, I would totally do it. So yeah, that's where the storytelling and the bringing cinematic concepts to life, that's where the videography comes in. And then travel comes in the fact of I am working on becoming a travel
Mm.
content creator and videographer. So that's my whole story.
I want to reel it back into what you said, what you shared with me and the audience. So obviously you've done a lot of thinking and when you were serving, right? So did you wish that you have made a different decision that night?
At first, yes. Now, I'd say it's about there's still a small part of me that wishes I could have made a different decision, because there's always that what if question of what if I had not done that, or what if I had not said yes to her coming with me, or what if I didn't go out that night, or there's so many what ifs and hypotheticals, and my life would be drastically different if that had not happened. But there's also the flip side of it is it was bound to happen eventually, and had it gone any further, it probably would have been a lot worse for me. So at first, yes, I was like, man, I wish I would have not made those choices that night. But looking at the changes I've made, looking at how my life played out, looking at the fact that I have a beautiful son, I mean, none of that would have happened had I not made those choices that night. And I don't think I would be half the man I am today without that night.
What would you say to those people that, they've also had their fair share of hitting rock bottom, but they feel that they cannot exit from whatever it is that they're facing right now? What
Well,
should
there's two things I would say. Um, the first one is a little blunt, but everyone always thinks of the worst case scenario, where one of the things I learned in there was to think about the best case scenario. Instead of saying, like, I started changing my language. And one of the things I started saying for everybody around me was, well, it could be worse. And when you start looking at things and you start realizing that someone else, sometime else, has had it worse than you, it definitely gives you a perspective shift of, yeah, I'm in this place and it sucks, but someone else has had it worse than you and they are going to come out better than you. So if you're feeling stuck, it's really your fault. No one's gonna change that. No one's gonna come and rescue you or take responsibility for you. And that was something I really had to realize was I felt stuck, but it was my own doing. I felt like I was in the wrong place, but it was my own actions that led me there. And no one, not your family, not your partner, not anyone, no one can come and make sure that you change. And so if you're feeling stuck, if you don't know how to get out of this hole that you are in, one of my favorite lines is, if you feel like you're in a hole, put down the shovel, because you're the one who dug the hole.
stop digging?
Stop digging. And the second thing I would say is it takes time. The first biggest thing I learned in there was taking responsibility for every single action and every single word and every single thought that I have on a daily and weekly and monthly and yearly basis. But the second biggest thing I learned is patience. You are where you're at because of what you did or what you said or what you thought, but you can change it. And when you start to make positive changes, it's not going to happen overnight. That night, me going to prison, me being found guilty, me being arrested, did not happen because of one night. Yes, it happened because of the choices of one night, but those choices, those actions came from years and years and years of cognitive bad habits, where I thought that porn was okay, where I thought that being a man was controlling, where I thought that all that matters is getting drunk and getting laid. Years and years of that conditioning led me to bringing fantasy into reality, and those don't mix ever. Now that I'm changing, one of the biggest things I had to learn, and one of the biggest things that everyone who feels stuck needs to learn, is it's going to take time. Be patient. Continue to do the work every single day, and it will happen.
I needed that. Thank you. Greg, okay, I'm going to ask a few more questions. So now
Yeah.
you mentioned about imposter syndrome, right? How do you think you keep that at bay? Or do you still face it
I still
sometimes?
face it. I still face it
We all
sometimes,
do.
not as much as I used to. And that's where the patience comes in. Is I realize I'm still going through changes. I realize I'm still going through, like, I'm not going to just wake up one day and my imposter syndrome is going to be gone because I went to prison. But the way I keep it at bay now is the perspective shift of what I was saying earlier is no one's going to come save you, but also no one's going to care. And I say that in the lightest way possible because there are people who care about other people. There are people who care how you're feeling. You have friends, you have family, you have loved ones. They care, but they're not going to care as much as you should care about yourself. And when you realize that, I would hesitate to post it because I was worried about what people are going to say or the comments or whatever else. And I realize now that those are the posts I should have been making and I should have been posting. Or I would post it and it would get a bad comment. I would take it down. And what I realize now is I could post 100 videos and my own brother won't see any of them. I could make a video making the most bold claim in the world and I'll get like 5 comments on it. None of it matters. Like, we are all just small specks of dust on a small pebble floating in a vast universe that we will never find the end of because it's expanding at the speed of light. And when you realize that in 100 years from now, all that matters is the things you did, not the things you didn't do. Like, imposter syndrome stops you from doing things because you feel like an imposter. Nobody's going to recognize you for the fact that you felt like an imposter. Nobody's going to be like, oh, wow, that guy, he dealt with a lot. They're going to realize he did all this stuff. And when you realize that none of it matters and everyone feels like an imposter at some point in their life, it just makes things so much easier. Where you can just be like, I'm going to post this video. I feel like an imposter, but so does everybody else. Nobody knows what they're doing. Nothing really matters and nobody really cares.
Yay! Oh my gosh. I really think that you should do the coaching on this side as well. So, okay, now I want to tie it back to Disneyland, right? And you
Yes.
told me that you just spent at least few days or a few days
Yeah.
in Disneyland, Florida. So it's like a full circle moment. Is this the first time you went to Disneyland again after you got out? No, or did you
No.
go? Okay.
After I got out, yeah. After I got out, yeah, this was the first time. So, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I worked there for 9 months, and then when I moved to Florida, I lived in 2 different apartments and a house, and it was always 15 minutes from Disney World. And this last weekend was the first time I had been back since getting out, which was it was a big moment of closure because when I went to trial, I had a girlfriend at the time. I had a pregnant girlfriend at the time. I had a house in Florida. We had a dog that would love playing in the backyard in the house. And in my heart, I believed that I was going to be found not guilty. And so we go to this trial, and it's like this time next week, we'll be back in our house in Florida. But that did not happen, obviously. And now it's a son with an ex. The dog is gone, and the house just got sold last week, actually. So I went down to Florida. And I definitely got a sense of closure. I drove by the house. I drove the old roads where I used to go to work on. And here's where the closure became a new door opening. My whole entire life leading up to prison made every decision. I didn't 100% make my own decisions. Even when I moved away from home and moved to Florida, I had girlfriends the whole time I lived in Florida. And so other people and other factors were playing into every decision I ever made. People's approval of me, people's opinions, people's relationships with me. I did not want any of that to suffer. So I was a people pleaser and I wanted everyone to be happy. And so I made decisions based on what other people wanted for my life. And so when I drove those old roads in Florida and I realized that I'm in Florida and I have nobody to answer to but myself, it was such a freeing feeling that I can finally, and I can finally take control of my life and do what I want to do and what feels right. And no amount of judgment or no amount of opinions or no amount of what I should be doing from other people can change what feels right now, what I feel in my intuition and my gut.
Ah, I want to dive into that, but I think we're going to keep that for another episode because the next time I want to bring you in for mindset.
Okay.
How do you master your mindset, and what is it about the next act that you're doing after this? Your travel
Yeah.
content, your coaching. I mean, we haven't even gone into your fitness, right? So I think I want to say this to the people listening. As much as the past has been dark for you, it's time to draw the line. And you have the choice, or it's you that draws the line in the sand. It's either you keep going, looking, rearview mirror, or you choose to look in front of you. And I mean, I just want to say thank you, Greg, for sharing that story of yours to me prior to coming onto the show, and right now here when this
Yeah.
will
Of course.
air. Okay, so I cannot help but to think about this question too when you were saying all these things just now. Every time you speak about this experience of yours, this events that unfolded, in your 20s, how does that make you feel now?
So when I first spoke on it,
Yes.
I had a lot of shame behind it. At first, I'm not gonna lie, I would tell people and I wouldn't give full details unless they asked because I didn't want them to judge me. And like I said, I didn't want that to ruin the relationship I had with that person. Now, if I got really close with somebody that I felt like I could trust, I would tell them the full details. But I kept it very minimal because I thought that that would protect me and I thought it would protect other people. And then I realized that that doesn't do that at all. And so now, like, there's obviously still shame behind it. There's obviously a lot of remorse behind it because I'm not proud of my actions. I'm not proud of the habits that I had. I'm not proud of that night. But like I said earlier, I wouldn't be the man I am today had that not happened. I started embracing my story and other people's stories while I was in prison. And that really helped me to learn how to be fully transparent. And when you're fully transparent, people trust you more. And it's something I really
Yes.
had to learn the hard way. So and something I had to learn the hard way was I'm going to be fully transparent. And yeah, it's going to put me in a dangerous spot. It's going to put me in a very vulnerable spot. But ever since I decided to be fully transparent with the story, it has made things so much better. So
You kept some friends and you lost some friends.
I
Would you
definitely
say
figured out
that?
who my friends were. I definitely figured out who my friends were. Now, the only thing I will say about full transparency is it does not work well for job interviews, but that's a whole different conversation.
Are you like employed at the moment? I know you have your side hustles, right? And this is what you want to do, your business. But are you employed at the moment, or are you gonna go full
I
on
I'm
entrepreneurial journey of yours?
I'm part-time employed. Like I said, I went through kind of like an identity of like I don't know if I want to go back into coaching. I want to do kind of creative stuff. The biggest thing I learned, and this is where the videography and the travel content comes in, is I want to create a massive personal brand because of, I think the main reason behind it is I want to share my story. But the second main reason behind it is my name got dragged through the dirt and I kind of want to
Mm.
rescue it a little bit. And maybe I'm doing that for the wrong reason. But the second part of it is I want whatever I want to do, I want to have freedom of location. So whether I'm a coach or whether I'm a videographer, hopefully I'm a travel content creator, I'm traveling and I'm able to just go anywhere I want in the world. As when you realize, I kind of had a sheltered childhood. I kind of had a sheltered life. And then I got put in an environment where I realized there's more to the world than I even know about. And I haven't even, like, I've been to Mexico on spring break with fraternity guys, and I've been to Canada, like the way east part of Canada, but like I haven't even experienced different cultures. I haven't even experienced different like environments. And there's so much for people to learn. I just said this on an earlier podcast. Before we as human beings discovered farming, we were nomads and we moved all over the world. And I think that in our wiring, in our brains, we never lost that, which is why people, they'll work this job for however many hours a
And I'm
week
gonna
and they'll be like,
travel.
yeah, I need a vacation. I feel like, because everyone who goes and travels and goes to someplace new, I've never met a single person who went someplace new and said, I hated it.
Yes. And also, by the time they end the vacation, I'm like, oh, I gotta go back to work. I mean, at least 90% people of the people that I met when I was on out vacationing, they'll be like, "Oh, but I gotta go back to my work. But then I'm gonna work for another 3 months, and then I'm gonna take one more. My next
Yeah.
vacation is Europe, for example."
Yeah. But to answer your question, so I was kind of having this battle of what I want to do when I first got out. And I was like, well, I don't know. Like I talked to people, I talked to mentors about becoming a coach again. Everyone was like, go back into fitness coaching because then you can get people like physical results. And I was like, well, I don't want it to just be fitness. They're like, well, you can't put a picture to mindset coaching. And I was like, they're like,
No,
people need to see.
don't you dare listen to that. Follow
Anyway,
your heart,
anyway,
Greg.
so I went through this battle of like, I don't know if I want to be a coach. I definitely want to be creative. I want to create videos. Like right before I got locked up, I pulled back from the fitness world. I became the guy in the chair. My partner, my boss, he was the face of the business because I didn't want to put my face out there anymore because of this news article and because of people commenting. So I became the guy in the chair. I became Jarvis or Alfred, whatever you want to say, whatever you relate to. So I got really good at making videos and social media management and email marketing and all this other stuff. I looked at that and I was like, well, I could be a videographer. I could be a creative soul. And when I learned how to draw and I learned how to do all this other stuff, I was like, I definitely have a creative side to me. So that's what I've been toying with lately. And then the whole travel thing is like somebody else saw my stuff and I actually got a coach who dropped out of college and now he travels the world. But to answer your question the long way, right now I'm part-time employed because, and I have been wrestling with this, especially coming back from Florida last weekend. I came back to an environment. I live with my parents, and my parents come from the generation of stability and security.
They all
And
they all do.
if I had told them I want to go full blown as an entrepreneur again, being a felon now, that conversation would not have gone over well. When COVID happened and everyone was forced to either work from home or become an entrepreneur, makes sense in their minds. But when an opportunity presented itself for me to make some money, I almost had to hop on it. Now coming back from Florida, seeing my old partner and going through, like, I had messaged you, it was kind of like a spiritual retreat. I got back Monday night and I was like, I think I should take the leap.
I think you should.
So to answer your question the long way again, yes, I'm part-time employed right now and I have all these little side hustles, but I'm being patient. One thing I learned is money does not come fast. If it comes fast, you'll lose it fast. So I'm being patient. I'm letting things build and I'm building in darkness. I'm building in silence and then it's going to explode one day.
I believe in you, Greg. 100%.
Thank you.
Okay. You're very welcome. Well, definitely we have some things that we want to talk about. We want to collaborate on some projects. So that too, we'll probably cover that in our episode, the next one. I want to
We're
interview
going to do a
you
part
on,
2.
yes, we're going to do a part two, guys. So we're going to pivot to a self-worth question. Now, this is a question that I ask every one of my guests, but I think this is most fitting for you. How do you define your self-worth right now? Or that's number one. And then number two, how did you define self-worth before and how did it evolve?
Ooh, I like number 2.
Okay. Number two then.
I'm going to answer both, but I'm going to start with number 2.
Okay.
My self-worth beforehand was determined by what other people thought of me. So when I was an entrepreneur or whether I was a sports official, if I went to officiate a basketball game as a referee and the crowd hated me and thought I made bad calls and the coaches thought I made bad calls, it didn't matter what I told myself. I thought I was a bad official. But if I went to the game and everything went smoothly and everything else, I was like, wow, I can really do this. Everything in my mind was determined on the environment around me, what other people thought of me, what other people said of me, and how other people acted around me. And I realized at being an entrepreneur that is not good because you're asking people to buy into your program, which is built on your belief in yourself. So when you tell people, oh, it's going to cost you $1,000, but you don't believe that you're worth $1,000, you're not going to get that person.
Yes, yes.
And so I had a really tough time.
Mic drop.
I remember
Preach.
I signed on a lady for $9,000 for a year of fitness coaching, which if she had signed up and we did a lot of work together. We had 2 to 3 calls a week, personal calls a week. Now, if you sign up in a gym to meet with a trainer 3 times a week, you're going to pay way more than $9,000 a year for a full year.
For a full year, yeah.
But I didn't believe I was worth $9,000. Like, I was like, oh, we don't have to, like, I can give you a discount. And she was like, no, like, we'll run it $9,000. And I was like, okay. And what happened was I didn't believe I was worth $9,000. And that led into the training. So every move I talk about imposter syndrome, every call we got on, every move I made, every change in her program, I was like, man, I don't think I'm giving her enough. Man, I don't think this is the right decision. And eventually she realized that subconsciously. She didn't tell me directly, but she was like, yeah, I just don't think this is right for me anymore. And about 5 months in, she canceled.
Wait,
And I look
hang
back
on.
on it.
So she paid you $9,000 and you didn't think that you were worth $9,000 and you kind of manifested that into your reality. And but after 5 months, she said, okay, go. Then you have to return the money back to her? Or did you keep that
Yeah,
$9,000?
yeah. No, I returned it
Oh,
back to her.
this is okay. All right. Sorry. Carry on.
So going back to self-worth now, okay? I went through a lot of changes. One of the exercises, and I'll try to keep it short, but I don't know if you're busy on time. One of the exercises that one of my good mentors in prison had us do was he had us fill out a check for
Ooh,
the
I
value
love
of our own
that.
lives.
Oh, yes.
For the value of our own lives. And he was like, hey, if your parents or your family members or your loved ones were writing a check, what amount would they write for your life? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, if you don't know that, no one can tell you that. That's your self-worth. And I was like, huh. So then I started reading all the books and I started getting really into self-worth and belief and spirituality and everything else. Then I went to Florida this last weekend and I had a talk with my old boss, my old partner, who we've been talking for years. I mean, we had a business together. We talked even while I was in prison. And we're walking around this lake. And he actually asked me this question. He goes, do you believe in yourself now? Do you have self-worth? And I said, yes. He goes, how do you know? I said, there is no one else in this world like me. There's no one else who has my exact fingerprint. There's no one else who has my exact story. There's no one else who has my exact day-to-day life. There are people who may look like me, but they're not me. There are people who may act like me, but they're not me. There are people who may talk like me, but they're not me. And when I realized that there's no amount of money, there's no amount of validation, there's no amount of approval, there's no amount of accolades or achievements that will ever amount to me being me in the most raw and authentic way possible. And then he told me, it's funny you just brought up manifestation. He goes, dude, if you can keep that mindset, you're going to make it very far. I said, why is that? He goes, everything you feared in the past. He goes, you're a very powerful manifester. He said, everything you feared in the past came true. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, and he brought up the client. He brought up the $9,000 client. He's like, you feared that you weren't doing enough. You feared that she was going to leave because you weren't a good trainer or you weren't a good coach. You feared all this stuff and bam, it happened. And he brought up a bunch of different examples. And then he goes, you went into trial and you knew in your heart that nothing happened that night, but you knew there was bondage. He's like, you feared that you were going to be found guilty of criminal confinement. And it happened. He's like, the jury didn't make their own decisions. He's like, the jury didn't make their own decisions. You made it for them. And I was like, holy cow. And we were walking around this lake and he's like, if you can keep your mind and your soul focused on your self-worth and your vision, you're going to manifest and you're going to bring a lot of powerful things in your life.
Yes. I believe that too.
I've been doing it my whole life with everything I feared. And so when I walked out, one of the biggest things I started saying was no fear, no doubt. And that's how I'm being flown out to do live podcasts, getting, different. Yeah. I just did a live podcast in Florida because I messaged somebody on TikTok. And I was like, hey, I saw your TikTok. You want to do a podcast? They were like, yeah, sweet. So no fear, no doubt. That's one of
no fear. I want to talk about I know I'm very mindful of the time as well. Powerful manifestors. So I think you kind of know this since you were a kid that whatever that you want usually comes to your lap very easily. Now, and it is up to us to attract the good ones, and it is also up to us to attract the bad ones. So if you just notice wherever that you are right now, we kind of hope and prayed for it. I mean, maybe not, the extreme to what you had faced before, but truly we are the manifester, right? But this, for me, at least, I've realized about myself as well. It's now flipping the script. Now, there's an old adage, right? What if this goes wrong? Oh, but what if it doesn't and you actually fly and take off, right? And so, what if it doesn't?
It's
What if
funny
you fly?
funny you say that. It's
Uh-huh.
funny you say that because my old boss, like I was always like, oh, I want 1 million followers and I want a big following and this and that. And he was like, what if you woke up tomorrow and had it? Would you be ready? And I was like, I don't know, man.
Exactly.
And he's like, you're not there yet because you fear having it. And I was like, he's like, what if you could? And I was like, huh. And then he started asking me a question that I ask every single day is why not you? Why not you? So yeah,
So,
it's a total shift. Total shift.
okay, Greg. Oh my gosh, this has been so what an eye-opening interview for me. So, Greg, what if you could create a quote right now for you to leave to the audience listening and the world as your legacy, what would it be?
Oh man, I feel like I should be prepared for this, but
I know really, yeah, this is the question that each one of my guests said, "Oh, Nick, that's an easy question." I'm like, yeah, that's the reason why I don't prep them
if
beforehand.
I could provide a quote or like a statement that would be my legacy,
Yes.
it would probably be this. There are no mistakes. Everything you do, everything you say, everything you are happens for a reason and is a result of your past, but it doesn't have to define your future. You can change, you can grow, you can make progress. And in the end, all that's going to matter is how you changed and how you spent your time growing and making progress.
Thank you. Now, how can people reach out to you, Greg?
Oh, yes. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Snapchat. You can basically find me anywhere. If Club Penguin was still a thing, I would be on there, but it's definitely not anymore. You can find me anywhere. I'll give you all my stuff to put in the show notes if you would like.
Yes, please. Okay, so for those tuning in right now, we will have our part two. So be prepared for that. And Greg, any last message before we wrap this interview up?
Yeah. Don't be afraid to tell your story. I hid behind mine for a long time. And when I became fully transparent, it has opened doors that I didn't think were even possible. So don't be afraid to tell your story. Don't be afraid to hop on a podcast. Don't be afraid to start a podcast if you've ever wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So, and come be on Nicolette's podcast because she's amazing.
Thank you. Wow. And there you have it, everyone. That is a wrap on today's powerful and inspiring story with Greg Danielson. Greg, I'd like to thank you for your tenacity, your resilience, your vulnerability, and your honesty to the world, and for doing the work on yourself and to inspire others every day. For our listeners, this has been Your Worthless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Now, if you've ever felt worthless, remember you are not alone. Your soul chose to be here to matter. And for that reason alone, you are worthy. A huge thank you to you, Greg, and to all of you for listening. Until next time, I am Nick Nieras. Keep shining, keep growing, and always remember, you are worthy and you are enough. See you in the next episode. And Greg, see you for part two. Bye-bye now, and thank you for your time. And cut! Love this episode? Now, transformation doesn't end here. Head on to @holistic.lifestyle_with_Nick. That is on my Instagram. Or head on to my website, www.deniaraswholisticlifestyle.com for more info on my coaching framework, which is the Worthy, Authentic, and Abundant Framework, digital guides, and my upcoming events such as retreats and master classes and workshops. Now, I also do intuitive readings where we get to check on your soul path. And if you're also wanting to check on your energetic alignment, I have done that too. And I offer that kind of services. So, my question to you is, are you ready? Because I am. to you, Greg. How are you doing today?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for saying yes to be interviewed and for coming on to my show. I'd like to introduce myself to you formally and to all of our listeners tuning in for the first time and our returning subscribers. My name is Nicolette. I am the creator for the podcast titled You're Worthless. Read that again, full stop, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Now, today we are going to talk about how do we get back up again after hitting rock. Now, I know I have been a guest on your podcast, and so it is only apt for me to invite you onto mine to tell the world your story.
Yes.
I'd like to introduce you to all of our listeners first, and then we can get right into our conversation. Hello, everyone. We have Greg Danielson here with us, a storyteller, coach, and content creator focused on personal transformation and freedom. Now, after hitting rock bottom, he rebuilt his life through discipline, mindfulness, and creative expression. Now he blends videography, travel, and personal development to create content that inspires others to reclaim their story and pursue a life they're proud of on their own terms. Definitely a topic that is very close to my heart. We are going to unpack so much here. So welcome to the show, Greg.
Thank you for having me.